Hello everyone. Today I will be talking about the New England poet Robert Frost and two of his most famous poems, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening and The Road Not Taken. I hope you will sincerely enjoy this poetry explication. Now, before we begin analyzing these two poems, let's get to know the author better. Robert Frost was an American poet born in 1874 in San Francisco, California. His father died when he was 11, so he and his mother lived together. He developed an interest in poetry throughout middle and high school, although he never finished his college diploma. In 1894, he published his first poem, My Butterfly, and in 1895 he married Eleanor White. The two tried and failed at farming together in New Hampshire, and in 1912 they moved to England. There, Robert Frost drew connections with famous poets, and he wrote two full collections of poems, which both received wide acclaim. In 1913, he wrote A Boy's Will, and in 1914, he wrote North of Boston. In 1915, the two moved back to the United States. Through the next several decades, Robert Frost became an American celebrity. Robert Frost's poetry is characterized by traditional verse forms and metrics, and his poems revolved around rural New England life. He used dialogue and everyday speech in his poetry, and most were blank verse, with a few exceptions like the ones we will be examining today. The theme is that life next to nature is life impossibly spent, which means that you will never be able to live truly with nature because civilization will forever own you. I will examine this theme with three different factors. Number one is symbolism. Two is diction and imagery. Three is connotation and denotation. Now, let's go to the first poem, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. It goes like this. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Now let's begin examining the theme, that life next to nature is life impossibly spent. First of all, in the second line, his house is in the village, though, symbolizes the isolation of civilization from nature, for the owner of the forest would rather stay in his village and house than live next to the woods he owns. Next, he will not see me stopping here shows that the woods are not commonly visited by people of the village because the speaker does not suspect that the owner of the woods will show up anytime soon. There is no presence of anyone else in the poem, presenting a solemn mood, and the sole presence of the speaker, far away from a farmhouse, symbolizes his isolation from civilization at the present moment. The little horse, a domesticated creature, shows discomfort being far away from civilization, and appears to be the only symbol of civilization present in this poem. The fact that the little horse cannot cope with being away from its farmhouse shows how humans, who have been used to civilization for so long, just like the domesticated horse, can no longer live next to nature like they used to be able to. After this description of the horse, the only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake shows the speaker's admiration of the natural setting that he finds himself in. The speaker is attracted to the beauty of woods, of nature, for the woods are lovely, dark, and deep. And the fact that the speaker is here stopping on his own will shows that he still has admiration for nature, even though he will find that he is bound to civilization. Finally, the speaker must leave the woods when he remembers that I have promises to keep, showing his reluctant duty to return to the civilization he has dedicated himself to. The first, and miles to go before I sleep, is literally interpreted as having to walk miles before sleeping somewhere in the village, in civilization, away from the woods, from nature. The second, and miles to go before I sleep, is interpreted not as a repetition of the last line, but as a metaphorical phrase for, and years to go before I die, which emphasizes the speaker's unbreakable bond to the civilization that owns him, all the way until he dies. The speaker's remorse and reluctance to leave and follow the path set forth for him to follow, the path of civilization, shows man's attraction to the simple things in life, the beauty of nature, but also the impossibility of its success in a world like his. Now let's move on to the second poem, The Road Not Taken, which is needless to say one of Robert Frost's most famous poems. It goes like this. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay and leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. Now let's begin examining the theme, life next to nature is life impossibly spent, with this second poem. Again, there is no other presence in this setting of woods other than the speaker. And Sorry I Cannot Travel Both already begins describing the mood of regret and reluctance in this poem. The time the traveler spends looking down and examining both paths shows the vast importance choosing the right path holds to the speaker. Also, the fact that the speaker doesn't have a map or directions, and the fact that he considers both paths based on amount of wear, show that he has come to these woods for no purpose other than to walk through it. The first two stanzas therefore communicate the message of the beauty of nature and the importance of admiring it. Next, and both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden black, firmly shows that the two paths are equal in the speaker's consideration. Yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back, also firmly shows that the speaker doesn't return to the location previously described. The fact that he must move on also shows to symbolize that civilization, what he is bound to, is tugging him back from the nature that he so wants to admire, and therefore he must move on even if his heart tells him not to. Now we approach the last stanza, which is arguably one of the most controversial stanzas ever written by Robert Frost, for it is interpreted in two very different ways. The stanza starts like this: I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. And this shows the speaker's inevitable return to the civilization he knows and is bonded to, and the fact that he will tell this story later on in his life, way after these events have occurred. The two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. Now it shows the speaker's betrayal of the nature he once admired, ages and ages before, because, first of all, the two roads equally lay the last time he saw them, so he acknowledged their equivalence in all aspects of being traveled through, which was the only criteria he was considering at the time. He also never returned to that setting. Also, the dash from two roads diverging of wood and I shows hesitation of the speaker when sharing his experiences. The next line, invented by the speaker, is crafted out of remorse. The speaker, as is human nature, imagined that the path he took was a better one, for otherwise his remorse would be too burdensome to carry, and creating this new perception is what has made all the difference. In the end, it is civilization that drives the speaker to lose his integrity, his admiration and appreciation of nature. Overall, Frost uses these two poems to exemplify his view of how the world has changed. He believes that the world is now coated with so many concerns by people that nature no longer holds a priority in people's mind. And this, in all aspects, is damaging and deteriorative to the human nature that we all have. Robert Frost uses many different tools in his poems, such as symbolism, diction, imagery, connotation, and denotation, in order to exemplify this, albeit in a very mysterious and sometimes misinterpreted way. In the end, the theme that life next to nature is life impossibly spent is proven with these two poems. In both poems, the speaker stops in the woods while on a journey, but must move on. The speaker is always puzzled, lonely, yet fascinated by nature, and the speaker shows remorse and regret when forced to move on to the civilization that bonds him, while always looking back and regretting not stopping and staying at the woods, staying next to nature, a little longer. I hope you all enjoyed this poetry explication. Maybe next time I'll do something else. Whatever happens, goodbye for now.